Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm back with another quick haul courtesy of Dynamite Entertainment. A couple months ago I shared a small haul of books I received from Dynamite in exchange for reviews, and here we are with another generous batch. Now at the time of this recording I have read and reviewed all 5 of these books in this video. However, I'm not exactly sure yet when I'm going to release this haul video with respect to all of the individual reviews, so if there's a book you see on this list that you'd like to get more information about or my review of, definitely stay tuned on the channel or look at my recent videos to see what's there. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into today's haul. Okay, first up today in no particular order, we have Maleficent by Sue Lee. Now Sue Lee both wrote and illustrated this book, and then we have covers throughout it by Jay Lee and even a variant cover art gallery at the back. Now my collection here is a hardcover edition, and I'm going to call it digest size. It is smaller than a standard size paperback, hardcover, or floppy, so it is a little bit more manageable, smaller. That's just something to be aware of. That being said, this is a gorgeous book. Collecting the entire Disney Villains Maleficent series, we not only have each of the issues, that variant cover art gallery I talked about, but we also have these nice little chapter breaks, and again, all of the covers reproduced. For those wondering, this book does not do a retelling of Sleeping Beauty. It doesn't give us a Maleficent origin story. Rather, what we have here is kind of a little sequence of vignettes or short stories or episodes that involve Maleficent. We basically have people come across her path, and we have her dealing with them in kind, or rather unkind. What struck me initially with this collection, right from the jump, is the incredible artwork we get from Sue Lee. The art is absolutely amazing. It's so detailed. I like the kind of sketchy look to a lot of the character models. For fans of Sleeping Beauty or Maleficent in general, she is of course immediately recognizable here in this incarnation, but I just really like what Sue Lee does with the overall world and world building. There's a kind of atmospheric broodiness to all of the stories contained in this small book, and I think that is large part due to the artwork here. Absolutely superb. As far as the story arc or plotting of these issues go, I think some issues were better than others for me. It feels very episodic with some definite connective tissue between a lot of the issues. There's a quality to this as well that feels almost like fables or fairy tales, and I really like that as well. There's a kind of dreamy, surreal quality to all of it. We have a lot of the characters seeming like they need to learn some kind of lesson that Maleficent doles out by the resolution of almost every issue. So I did like that. I like the kind of fable aspect to it. I'm sure that that is what this creator was going for in many respects, and I think to that end it was really achieved. I don't really want to go into any spoiler heavy details in a haul video like this, so I'll leave more of my kind of analysis of this to the review video. But if you are a fan of Maleficent, I think that this is definitely worth checking out. Or if you're captivated by the artwork, as I surely have been reading through this, again, seek out Disney Villains Maleficent from Dynamite Entertainment. Next on my haul video today, Lilo and Stitch Volume 1 Ohana by Greg Pak. Now this is a really fun one as well. Like the Maleficent volume immediately preceding this is also a digest-sized hardcover, so it is smaller than standard size, but I really love this collection. It includes the first, I believe, 4 issues of this ongoing series, and that's something I'll say right from the jump. This book contains its own first story arc, which is nice. You get a great beginning, middle, and end character-driven story arc here for Lilo and Stitch, but it also teases the next story that will presumably debut in the Volume 2 collection sometime down the road. The art direction we have here from Julia Giacomino is gorgeous. It looks like it jumped right from the pages of the Lilo and Stitch film. I will say we don't have really the watercolor looking backdrops, but the actual character models are just pitch perfect, exactly what I remember from on screen. The world is vibrant, lush, and interesting. We also span the globe a bit with this collection. I don't want to spoil too much, but it is nice. We do have, of course, some scenes set in Hawaii, but we'd go to a couple different areas, which is just kind of cool to see Stitch in this broader world. In addition to Lilo and Stitch, we have some returning characters from the film franchise. We have Pleakley, we have Jumba, we have, even more than that. I don't want to, again, get into too many plot details in the course of this haul video, but I felt like this was a blast to go make my way through. One point I will leave here, though, is I recommend watching the first movie prior to reading this, because the events and all the character dynamics that are built into that main movie, Lilo and Stitch, are kind of the foundation to enjoy this story. This takes place sometime after that first movie, so if you've seen the movie, that's really all you need to enjoy this collection. Without that movie, however, there isn't a ton of introduction to these characters or their dynamics, so you might be a bit at a loss. Again, I think this is great for fans of this character or this franchise as a whole. I was delighted revisiting this world. I do think that this is a great book for all ages. In fact, I did read portions of it aloud with some of my littles, and I had a grand old time. I really am excited to see Dynamite do more and more Disney properties in recent years. I think it's a blast. I am a huge Disney fan myself. Between Maleficent and this, I was definitely spoiled recently, just kind of dipping a toe into this world. If interested, don't miss out on Greg Pak's Lilo and Stitch. Next on this list is my final Disney product for this haul video. This is the Darkwing Duck Foul Play trade paperback from Amanda Deibert and Carlo Loro. So this is a standard size trade paperback. I think they also released it in a standard size hardcover if I'm not mistaken, but this is another great one, and the 90s kid in me absolutely rejoiced getting this volume. I definitely remember watching the animated Darkwing Duck series growing up, so there was a huge nostalgia factor for me here. And while I say I did grow up with some of that cartoon, it has been so long since I've revisited this franchise, so I wasn't sure how much of this would be familiar for me reading through this comic. And what this comic is just kind of a current adventure for our caped crusading hero. We do have his whole main supporting cast of characters, heroes, and villains, so all the fans of the animated series will surely like this comic, I think. Again, very nostalgic for me. The more characters that would pop up, the more my little light bulb in my head would go on, and I think, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about this character, this villain, and I was just grinning from ear to ear going through this. One note I do think would be helpful here is kind of like Maleficent, this is not an origin story, this is kind of just an adventure that happens in the life of Darkwing Duck. And like Lilo and Stitch, I do think some previous knowledge of the IP or the character would be helpful before diving into this adventure. I don't think you need to know much, I don't think you need to have watched the whole series to enjoy it, but if you've seen a couple episodes of the show, or you at least know some of these characters, you can really dive right in. In fact, I'm going to even revise that. I think you can dive in completely blank slate to this franchise with just this comic. You just will have to kind of learn and fill in the gaps as you go. We get introduced pretty early on to his daughter, his best friend slash ally, and a cavalcade of colorful villains that he battles against. This is of course not his first outing with any of these characters, and you feel that as you read it, but I think the creatives did a great job of making it accessible to a newer fan base. I do think, again, there is the novelty for all of us nostalgia readers who come back after enjoying the cartoon series, just seeing some of our favorites pop up. You get to see some developments with some of that supporting cast, as I mentioned. I don't want to spoil too much, but it's a good one. This is ultimately kind of a Batman parody as far as a character, so we have him dressing up with his gadgets and trying to save the day. We also have this character being pretty vain, and yet he has some deep connections to his family and loved ones, and he's always trying to do the right thing. I think the dialogue was really sharp. The art was gorgeous. This is another example of, I feel like the art was so loyal to the main source material, so everyone was super recognizable, and I really loved just revisiting this whole world. And I think actually going back into a franchise like Darkwing Duck, which is a superhero parody kind of work, now that I have delved further into the world of superhero comics in my adulthood, I think that this parody is even richer for it. Like, I think there's so many in-jokes and kind of superhero comic kind of slapstick humor here that it really worked for me. I really enjoyed making my way through this, and it's another title I think would be good for just about all ages. Next on this list, we have Thundercats Volume 1 Omens by Declan Shalvey, Drew Moss, and Stephen Mooney. This is a really fun collection. I have it here in a standard size hardcover. I think they also released a trade paperback, as well as, of course, the floppy single issues. So this is the inaugural volume kicking off the new Thundercats kind of comic book universe. I was really happy to see that this is a retelling or reimagining of the origin story for the Thundercats. Thundercats. So for people that were raised with the cartoons, you can jump right in with a good hit of nostalgia. And for people that have always been curious about Thundercats and are maybe going in as a blank slate, and for everyone in between, this is a perfect on-ramp to the franchise and these characters, as again, you do get the origin story retold within these pages. What I like here with what Shalvey did though is that he expanded this origin in some meaningful ways that really help accentuate some of the character development early on. He also added some additional characters and conflicts, all of which were really fun. On the art, as I mentioned for most of it, we have Drew Moss, who is paired with Shalvey's writing. Drew Moss's approach to the Thundercats, I think, are even a little more rounded and kind of traditionally cartoony or animated looking than even the original 80s cartoon series, so that is something that took a bit of getting used to, but I ultimately love these character models and the broader world that these two helped create. I think that this was a really fun one. It was absolutely immersive, like I said, character grounded storytelling, which I always love, and as someone who was a fan of the cartoon series here and there passingly, this was a really great bridge back into this world in a way that was accessible. It reminded me of what I liked about the original, and I felt like it was, again, just a really good refresh and on-ramp. Issue 5 in this collection, the last issue included, was written and illustrated by Stephen Mooney. I'm not really going to show too much of that issue here. If you want to see more about it, check out my full review of this title, but that last issue in this collection is more of a one-shot feeling kind of issue, and it really stops the main plot to go deeper with some of our primary cast of characters. Loved it, loved the extras in this collection. The fact that they released here as a standard hardcover as well was a real treat. And yeah, just overall, really fun here. Thundercats Omens. I'm really excited to see where they go with this Thundercats universe. My understanding is they've still kept this book running. There's been spin-off books, like I think Chitara's coming out. I don't know how connected or not connected it'll be, but I think Silverhawks is a title coming out too, which was based on another animated property around this time. So yeah, really fascinated seeing what Dynamite does with some of these licenses. This in particular was quite fun, and one I had been looking forward to since I talked to Declan Shalvey a couple months back. If interested, I do recommend Thundercats Omens. And finally, to round out my haul from Dynamite Entertainment, we have Ian Fleming's James Bond 007 for King and Country by Phillip Kennedy Johnson. Now, this is a run I had no idea was ongoing. I am a fan of Phillip Kennedy Johnson. I really have enjoyed what I've read of his Superman stuff, for example, but I had no idea he was working on a Bond book the last couple years. This is book 2 of his run after Mimrodon, I think was the volume 1. I will say I did not read that volume 1. I actually jumped right into this book 2, and I think for the most part I was pretty safe to do that. I didn't really need the volume 1 to enjoy this. This felt like its own separate mission, or if you were a fan of the movies, it felt like this could have been its own movie, and I didn't really need to know too much of what came before, other than the introduction of that organization Mimrodon, which is a player in this book 2. But this is your classic spycraft, kind of modern espionage, terrorist, fighting thriller kind of book. I did enjoy it overall. I think we have, Bond feeling like Bond, which is, I think, one of the best commendations I can give a good James Bond comic. We have some really intelligent supporting cast of characters. We got a femme fatale, some Bond girls. We have a great villain here in the organization, and overall, I enjoyed it. This is a narrative, too, you'll see from the earliest pages that it's kind of a rogue mission kind of movie, too. Any fan of Bond or any kind of spy movies or franchises in general, there's often episodes or periods where they kind of are wanted by their own agency and they have to do a mission kind of off the books. That is really what we have here with For King and Country, but for the most part, I thought that this was a really fun ride. I do think that this is a more adult title. In fact, there is a scene of sexuality. Nothing too graphic, I thought, but just something that should be noted. Reader discretion advised, of course. The art through this collection as well, I think, should be noted. I loved the color palettes and shadows that were used throughout. The character models were all dialed in. I think the action sequences were also particularly well done. A great sense of motion or movement or momentum in a lot of those scenes, which I think is interesting to convey in a visual comic book medium like this, and I always think it's commendable. So shout out there, fun stuff. I will say I am newer to James Bond comics after being a fan of the Fleming novels and the film franchise. In fact, other than this, I believe the only James Bond comics I've really delved into was the Warren Ellis collection, or his run, which I also did enjoy. But I am taking more James Bond comic recommendations. If you've got them, let me know in the comments. And that is 007 for King and Country from Dynamite. Okay, and that's going to round out our haul today from Dynamite Entertainment. A huge thank you again to our sponsor over there at Dynamite. This was a really fun batch of books. As I mentioned, I'm not sure exactly when I'll drop this haul, but rest assured I have read and reviewed all the titles here, so you'll see them trickling out on my channel. I think notably why I think this haul was really fun is I got some comics that are really open for all ages or most ages, which I don't often cater to on the channel, but I think a lot of people that maybe want to read with their kids or are looking for good recommendations. I think something like Lilo and Stitch and Darkwing are pretty open to more of an age range there. I think just about anyone could enjoy those. Maleficent, maybe a slightly older child audience could enjoy it. Thundercats, maybe older than that. And then that James Bond book, I do think is for a little bit more mature readers, certainly. But yeah, I do think that this was a fun range of books here. I enjoyed seeing all of these licensed properties given these comic book series. In the comments section, I would love to know, have you read any of the titles I just talked about in the haul video? I'd love to get some conversations going. Do you recommend any other licensed comics? This is something I've been talking about recently when I've been reviewing Dynamite books or in shorts. What are some licensed comic properties that you've enjoyed reading? I'd love to get recommendations for those going in the comments as well. And any other comic book miscellany, go ahead and shoot them out in the comments. And thank you all so much for watching. This has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, that comment we talked about, and maybe share this video with a friend. Thanks everyone. Have a good one.